All right, everybody. With us this week, we're joined by Ernest Cantillion, the co-founder of Kinsale Spirit Company. This is our first Irish interview. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to the plane ride over to Ireland in Cork County, but that's all right. The StreamYard link works just fine. But Ernest, welcome to the podcast, and how's everything going?
Yeah, thank you. Delighted to be here. You're from two parts of the world that I love, Rhode Island and Massachusetts. So, delighted to have the chat.
So is this officially our farthest from our Rhode Island Boston radius? Because I think the previous record was the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Yes, this is now the farthest. So
Great.
There we go. And now after this conversation, we're going to have to plan a trip to Ireland and head to Kinsale in person as well.
I'll be delighted. It is a really good place. Ireland is an amazing place to visit, but Kinsale in particular is a really fun town. It's quite like Newport, very similar. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, let's dive right in. So before Kinsale, let's talk about Ernest. Beforehand. Yeah. So you went to what was it? Cork County College?
Yeah, UCC. It's called University College Cork.
Yeah, University of College Cork. But you are one of the most respected entrepreneurs in the area. Before owning and operating.
I don't know about that. But anyway. Yeah,
hey, that's what the internet says. I'm just, we're just journalists trying to report the facts, right?
Fake news, I think. But anyway, look, I'll take it. Thank you.
So before Kinsale, you owned and operated Sober Lane Electric Bar and Restaurant. You were part of the Cork Business Association as a president. You did a lot of different things, but why the hospitality industry for you?
Yeah, it's funny. So my family is a legal background. So my mother, father, brother, sister are all solicitors or lawyers, as you would call them. And maybe my lack of aptitude for exams probably was one of the reasons why I probably am a lawyer now. But I did commerce in UCC with law subjects to keep that door open. But even though I do spend most of my days probably in the office noting paperwork, ultimately I enjoy just people-facing work. You know what I mean? And I think that particularly it's a little bit different in the States. But a lot of the time, for most of the court appearances in Ireland and the UK, a solicitor communicates with a barrister, and a barrister does the communication with the court. So really, you just are in the background. So you very little. You interact with your client, but you never interact with a jury or really the judge or any of that. So it's an awful lot of reading, an awful lot of paperwork, an awful lot of deep concentration, and I just didn't think it would be for me. So we've no real background in hospitality. Is a bit of a wild card. So I trained to be a chef for a year after I went to college. Then I realized that is an incredibly hard job. So while I enjoy cooking, being a chef is hardcore. So I managed a bar then for another year, and they kind of overlapped a little bit. And it was just the timing that I was in Ireland. I don't know if the expression Celtic Tiger is international, but Ireland had a booming economy. And it was a very good time to borrow money, and which I did, lots of it, and bought my first business when I was 23, which is Sober Lane. So I'm broadcasting from an office upstairs there now. So we're here 17 years maybe, and dive bar is probably the wrong word, but it's kind of like a compromise between a dive bar and a sports bar. We're getting more and more foodie, I guess, as we get older, and just as our food just has a good reputation. But it's still quite an American style bar. And that would be from the time I spent in Boston. So we can go down that rabbit hole in a second, but I don't talk too much. But so I did business in college, trained to be a chef. I kind of thought it'd be a good life skill to have anyway. Then I kind of was looking for a job, didn't know what I was going to do, and all my friends were gone off working in kind of PwC and accounting type firms and stuff from the business degree, and that wasn't for me. So a friend of a friend knew the people who owned this bar and they needed somebody to run it. So I gave it a go and it went well, and then an opportunity to buy one came up. So it happened. That was all in the space of 2 years kind of, So I wouldn't say it kind of, like, I still have that Peter Pan moment. I'm still not sure what I'm going to do when I grow up. You know what I mean? But it's been hospitality for the last nearly 20 years and so far so good. So I think maybe sometimes if you're doing something and you like it, you can get bogged down in life plans. And, if you're enjoying something and you think you have an aptitude for it, drive it on.
So Will and I have both been to Cork. We know it's an incredible place. I was there last for the Guinness Jazz Festival. And I'm like, how many bars are playing jazz at this time? Are you kidding me? Yeah. But in your eyes, what makes Cork or I'll say it like an Irishman, Cark, right? What makes Cark such a special place for this kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's great that you've been there because that is relevant. And Cork, well, it's the second city. It loses out a little bit to Galway or some parts of Kerry sometimes from a tourism point of view because it's not our core industry, and it's funny when you if you look up the top 10 things to do in Cork, a lot of them are on the periphery of the city. It's a city that's a really nice time to spend time in, but it doesn't have those big like Guinness Storehouse, Grafton Street attractions, or doesn't have the Cliffs of Moher or that kind of stuff. But as you will have witnessed firsthand, it is just a really good town. Like a plethora of good pubs, really good restaurants. It's really safe. Even it sounds like a small thing, but the city actually is on an island. So from a tourist walking around point of view, you just kind of say to somebody, stay within the two rivers, and you're not going to get lost. You know what I mean? You can just go in any direction, and when you get to water, turn around. And so it's a really good town to visit, and it's compact. So it's like for me, it's the way there's towns that are nice to visit, and you'd say, oh, I love that, but I wouldn't live there. And I think Cork is a really nice place to live, and it's a good place to base yourself to if you're going to have a look at Kerry or see West Cork, which is stunning. If you don't mind a little bit of driving, Cork is a good base. But I think our hospitality is probably what we do best. I'm biased, but I really think that we've got exceptional restaurants and stuff here,
And then you've also, we were mentioning this, you've already brought up Boston, but you've got ties to this area in New England. So you lived in Boston for a bit.
Yep.
You've got ties to Rhode Island. Where, what are those ties, and what did you spend that time here doing, and what did you do when you were in New England?
So I've cousins in Providence. I would have had cousins in, but they're all they're kind of my mother's cousins or my grandparents' cousins. They're older, but in Boston, they're kind of a generation behind me, and their kids have scattered. But as I said, I spent kind of an extended summer working in Boston. I adored it. Down to Newport a number of times to visit friends. But long predating that, the town of Kinsale, where we're based, and Newport are twinned. And Cork actually has very successfully leveraged. I don't know if twinning is a big thing there, but like, for example, bizarrely, Cork is twinned with Shanghai. And there is that relationship is taken really seriously, and there's lots of business has happened between them, which is, Shanghai, one of the biggest, most important cities in the world, and Cork, well, it's very important to us. It's not at that level, but that twinning has worked. We're twinned with Munich. We're twinned with some nice places like Antibes, but Kinsale is twinned with Antibes and with Newport, and I think Kinsale was ahead of its time. It had a food circle and some really high end restaurants, and you get kind of wealthy visitors from the UK over visiting before food tourism kind of was a thing in the 70s and 80s. It had vintage car rallies, and it's kind of an affluent area. Again, a bit like Newport with the vintage cars and the Aldrin Motor Museum or Car Museum and that kind of crack. So they've got a lot in common. But people decided it'd be good to set it up. So every year, a group of the restaurant owners and chefs go over to Newport, take over one of the restaurants there, kind of do a pop-up. Every second year they do it. And most years, if I'm correct in saying, the Newport Patrick's Day Festival runs the weekend before Patrick's Day sometimes. And some of the reasons that it's to accommodate the twinning so that people can be at the Newport Patrick's Day Festival and then at the Kinsale. So it's a fit that has, I'm sure lots of places are twinned, but these are actually people who have realized they have a lot in common. They're both nice places to visit. They can probably expense it through work. No harm in that. And it's just a good way to do business and a good social thing. So when we started the Kinsale Spirits Company, it was natural for us to look into Rhode Island. Now I wouldn't say it's a challenging state to do business in, but it's an unusual one in that it's very seasonal. You've got Newport, say Providence, are so different. It's not the biggest population, so for a small company like us, it's hard to put resources there. But in the same breath, and we've probably learned the hard way, we spent a lot of time and a lot of money in New York, and everybody else is there doing the same thing. And it's no novelty to be Irish there, and there's gems to spend huge money there. And whereas we found when we went to bars in Rhode Island, because the Kinsale connection, and also maybe because they don't get the love that some of the bigger cities get, we were better received. And bars were more inclined to give you go and appreciated you calling and building a relationship, and take a shot at a product they weren't familiar with or that familiar with. So yeah, it's been a good relationship for us. I know Will, we're chatting in the background of bits and pieces, and one we hope to explore further.
So that leads us to obviously Kinsale. So what was that moment for you that you realized I needed to get into the spirits game, and how did you form the team and form the people around you to create Kinsale?
Sure. So actually gone way back in the story, the guy who gave me my first job managing a bar, we built up a good relationship. Thomas is his name, and he's a few years older than me. We stayed in touch, and I would have always asked him for advice, and I'd set up my own businesses. And he was the one who decided, him and his sister decided that there was an opportunity in Kinsale, and he's lived there for 20 plus years, and so has she. And Kinsale is about maybe 20 kilometers from Cork City, maybe a 30-minute drive. So I would be there regularly, but he's based there. And he recognized that it was a phenomenal brand, the Tony Kinsale. And at the same time, so he's interested in whiskey, but there was kind of the start of what became a gin boom happening in Ireland and maybe further afield as well. It was a brand that was very suitable. Kinsale as a brand for gin. We actually have it. I should have had all our brands ready for this call, but this is just on my desk. It's an empty bottle of Kinsale gin. We actually call it Summer Cove Kinsale gin in the States, just because people might be that familiar with Kinsale on its own. And Summer Cove is where we're building our distillery at the moment. It's a lovely name, but it's an actual part of Kinsale. Anyway, he went back to college, studied distilling. And food science, and to himself and sister, they came up with a recipe, bought a small little 5-litre still to make gin. And I had a bar in Dublin. I just sold it. I moved back to Cork. I still had 2 bars here, and we were keeping in touch. And I said, I'm looking to do something different. He said, why don't you join me in this? We'd always worked well together. So we did. So we fell into it. And his sister, who's been an integral part of it, wanted it more as a hobby. So it was an opportunity for me to get into the business. So we kicked it off together. So we spent the first, this is maybe 7 years ago or something like that. So we spent the first 3 years really, like there was probably a year and a half of development, figuring out the recipe. Like most of the botanicals came from Kinsale, and it was a case of growing them and foraging them and seeing what was natural there. And we tried loads of them. Like we were really keen to include a seaweed, but we actually couldn't get one that had a nice, even though it was a cool thing to have on the bottle, marketing wise, it didn't actually add anything to the flavor profile. If anything, it distorted it. There's lots of that. So they did about 100 distillations, and Tom has a really cool bar called The Raven, and every night he was bringing in that day's distillation or the previous night's distillation to a group of gin drinkers there and saying, what do you think of this? And they were saying it's nice, but it doesn't taste like gin, or all I can taste is juniper. And I've written down somewhere, I should know, but I think it's something like the 67th distillation was the one. It was the one that was universally popular, but also it was quite distinct. So we got 100 bottles of it made. Most of those went to family and friends, and we were kind of tipping away in it. And then we got a listing in Super Value, which is the biggest supermarket chain in Ireland. I suppose the gin kind of took off, things got a bit real, and we realized that we had, I have 3 small kids, Thomas 6, with other business, lots going on. So we said, okay, if we want to make whiskey and we want this to grow, we need to get a full-time CEO, somebody with more experience than us. So we did. We knew somebody else, a friend, who had launched a vodka in the States before, who had worked in export for Heineken beer and managed a country for them. So we gave an attractive deal to join on the condition that he gave it like 3 years, solid, concentrate, nothing else. So he joined maybe about 18 months before COVID. We spent all that time securing whiskey, doing the branding, sorting out trademarks to launch our whiskey. And then the plan was to launch on Patrick's Day 2020. We know how that narrative went. Anyway, after about 6 weeks of panicking, we decided to launch anyway because we realized nobody was doing anything. We said, okay, geez, we have a chance to have like all the space to ourselves. So again, it was a tip so Super Value have been incredibly good to us in Ireland. So we kind of informally found from them that all the new product releases had been delayed and reps had been laid off or furloughed or put in other parts of the company. And a lot of people were concentrating on online sales, and for an unknown brand, that really wasn't something for us. So we just went for it, and for better or for worse, alcohol is a food type, so it was considered essential service. So when everyone else was locked down at home, we could still move freely, and all the supermarkets were still open, and they were glad. They were bored, So once we did the safety protocols, they were really happy to have somebody come in, try this new product, interact with them. We were the only products that did sales and promotions during that time. So just the gin did really well, and it was a good way to launch our whiskies. So I'm doing all the talking, but that's kind of how we got launched, and we've done lots of things since, and we can chat about them. And there's certainly been lots of challenges, the things I would do differently. We caught some lucky breaks, and kind of we've scaled ourselves fairly incrementally. We're actually just taking on our first outside investor now at the moment. It's a very exciting one. I'd love to tell you about him, but we're still going through the paperwork. But he's a really big player in the whiskey business in the States, and it's a bit of a game changer for us to have him on board. That he's interested in coming on board, and that he's agreed to, but that he's actually going to play a strategic partner in business. So we're kind of ready to kick it on to the next level. And you guys are in business, you know this, but for me anyway, while hospitality, you think you know a lot about spirits business, like suddenly we were in a manufacturing business and a branding business and a logistics business and an online business, and there was just so much to learn, and we made lots of mistakes. And I'm probably glad that we were at a reasonably small scale when we did it. I mean, so the gin was in a completely different looking bottle when we started. Changed the name of one of the whiskies. We now we've maybe 6 products, but because of different sizes and miniatures and cast strength stuff, I think that gives us like 27 SKUs. You know what I mean? Like, so we did some fun white label projects that we can chat about in a while for other kind of people, and there's other things that we didn't do and maybe we should have. We came up with an amazing recipe with that gin for a mascherino. I always pronounce it wrong. Mascherino cherry cream liqueur, which is very different to what's out there. And cream liqueurs are deceptively good sellers, you know what I mean? And because they're low alcohol, they're reasonably good price points. We thought it'd be a good way to kind of stealthily launch the gin in the States and things like that. But you for every thing that you pick, there's less, you know, it's a trade-off. So for me, we've got really good products, and we just need to maybe concentrate and mine them and push them and grow them. And the incremental thing is done for us. I know lots of brands take off and go like that. But I think there's lots of ones that take the shot and go like that too. Whereas for us, we're going at a nice steady pace. We've grown every year considerably, and there's a team of maybe 11 of us now. I think there's 2 or 3 in the States, 11 or 12. I should know that figure off the top of my head. I guess somebody going to be highly insulted there, forgotten. Don't ask me to name them. But we actually had a get together of everybody bar one in Kinsale recently. It was nice because we hired people during COVID and they're abroad. But yeah, it's been a really interesting journey, and every stage has been exciting, but we're just kind of maturing, I suppose, out of the little startup phase into the kind of we're still really small and in the big scale of things, but we're kind of matured a little bit. Do you know what I mean? There's kind of decent volumes getting there now. It's exciting. It's getting interesting, I suppose is the word.
So you hit on a lot of the challenges, right? I think, like hiring a CEO is a big one, just sort of growing from those 2 phases. I want to talk about your brand now, right? So you've got this brand that you've built. You've got essentially 2 signature spirits, maybe it's more, but the Kinsale Gin, which you showed us, and then the Red Earl Irish whiskey. I mean, where did you start with building those? Because it seemed like, some pretty signature products. So, when you said, all right, we're going to build a great gin, we're going to build a fantastic Irish whiskey, where does that start? And, what identity did you sort of want these big brands to take?
Before we started the conversation, I should have got some of the bottles so I could hold them up and show you. But anyway, they're in the storeroom upstairs, which is a pity. But so we've 2 ranges of whiskey. We have the Wild Atlantic series, which we can chat about in a second, and we have the Battle of Kinsale series. And we felt it's a very crowded market, and we want to do something a little bit different. We knew that would. So we've very distinctive branding. It probably is not to everybody's taste, maybe of whiskey traditionalists. There's a blended whiskey, a single grain, and a single malt. Single grain would be unusual. There's a handful of single grains out there from Ireland. They're all triple cask. They're very interesting casking profiles. And the casking relates back to so for example, Red Earl, I'll just give you the story on him. The Battle of Kinsale was a battle between Ireland and Spain versus England, and happened in Kinsale. It was in 1601, and the 2 Irish generals had previously been enemies. Decided there's no way they could individually defeat the English forces, so they united, and and came Red Earl and the Great Earl. And so for Red U, when the Spanish and Irish forces lost the battle, they retreated to Spain. So he was on his way to Spain, to the Spanish king, to ask for another force to have another go at the battle. He stopped off in Salamanca's castle, which is near the Rioja region of Spain, famous for its wine. And he was poisoned by an English spy who poured poison in his ear when he slept. So that was kind of a big deal because it was on Spanish soil and it was an act of war and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, poison in his ear while he slept is kind of a tragic way to go, but it's a bit fairy tale-ish. There's a real stunning kind of a Game of Thrones almost statue to him in Spain. But so for that reason, that whiskey is finished in Rioja casks, Rioja casks, if you like to pronounce it. So we put a lot of work into it tastes this way for a particular reason. That's why that guy's on the bottle. That's a story, connecting them in the background. And we did it with the three, and they all came together. So we have a lovely selection box that goes really well in like travel retail and duty frees and stuff, where it's a blended whiskey, a single grain and a single malt, so people can taste the three different profiles. So the idea was to just stand out, and it has done that for us. It definitely hasn't been for anyone. The price points in the States are, I think, $30, maybe $39 and $40, maybe $35. It depends on the state and your sales tax. So I'm just trying to think about your two locations, but say 30, 35 would be Red Earl's price. It's funny. So because it's a distinctive looking bottle and most people there say haven't heard of it, it's not the easiest first sell. But anywhere that we get a foothold, we get great resells. And similarly with bars, we have a Red Earl cask strength that makes the most amazing old fashioned and does really well in cocktail bars. So it's liquid that people really like when they try it, which really, it's funny. So you would think good liquid, most important thing. And it is from a resale, a repeat customer point of view. But they got to buy the bottle to taste the liquid. You know what I mean? So there's a chicken and egg. That brings us to our second product. So we felt that a lot of people were going to premiumization and 7-year-old liquid and 10-year-old liquid and doing that kind of stuff. And we said, okay, we've done that. We've got products. They're growing nicely. They're going through state by state. But we also want bulk product. So the problem with the Earls is because each one is triple casked and things like that. It's a hard one to scale up for massive quantities. We wanted one that, so we kind of reverse engineered it. Okay, can we always get this bottle? Can we always get enough of this liquid? Let's spend every penny we have and buy lots of that liquid. What are familiar taste profiles? So what's a brand that will look like a heritage Irish whiskey to people? So we came up with Wild Atlantic Irish Whiskey. So there's two expressions of it. It is there's an IPA and a reacher. And whether I'm allowed to say this or not, if somebody asks me what does it taste like, I'd say the IPA tastes like cask mates, and the reacher tastes like Black Barrel. And even better, it's probably cheaper in most states. So they've been really successful expressions of Jameson, and so they're taste profiles that we know have worked in America and the American palate like it. And also this product was built for America. So we do good sales with it in Ireland, but America really is our focus with it. And it's at $25 in most states. You'll see it. I think I saw it in Wisconsin the other day for 22 or something. But we deal nearly exclusively with Total Wines, who've been a game changer for us. They've been really good, particularly in places like Florida where they have lots of stores. And it just clicked with them. We're hoping to be in their Spirits Direct program soon, which would be a game changer again. So for us, for small people like us to have a brand in that would be game changing. And we've caught some breaks with it in that the last 2 years in the San Francisco Spirits Awards have won a double gold. So there's only 3 Irish whiskies won a double gold, and the other 2 were over $50. So we've got a double gold winner at $25 in a national chain. We're particularly excited about next year because the way those awards work is if you get double gold 3 years in a row, you get a platinum. It's the only way to get a platinum. So a lot of years there is no platinum at all. And I don't think there's been a platinum Irish whiskey for a number of years. So I don't know if we're going to get it. We have to it's a blind taste test, so it goes purely on the liquid. But so there, I suppose we've complementary but different products. So we have a product all the way from $23 all the way up to $49. Very different taste profiles, different looking bottles, and are growing in different ways. So the Earls have got some serious followers, repeat buyers and online websites. and in Cask Cartel and things like that are good for us. And as I said, and things like in bars for cocktails. But then Wild Atlantic is somebody's going along and they drink a bottle every weekend or having a party, whatever. Wild Atlantic, great looking bottle, see the double gold medals. Looks like an established brand. Hopefully it's getting there. It's an expression. It's a little bit different. It's not just blended whiskey. It's Reachar or it's IPA, and it's the right price point, and off they go. So I suppose different products aimed at different, not even different people, maybe the same people, but for different occasions. One is driving home on a Friday after work, something for the weekend and the barbecue, something else, and I'm going to a friend's house. I want to bring them a whiskey they haven't tried before, or a Spanish Earl. It's a present with nice gift boxes. You could give it to somebody as a lovely present. So it's trying to catch as many people on occasions and buying opportunities as possible.
And for you, being based in Ireland, how was the transition of getting your product to the States, and how was the perception of breaking that mold?
Excruciating. Yeah. Brutal. So the mold is definitely not broken. You know what I mean? It's we're chipping away, but I'll tell you a challenge we have at the moment. So we have limited resources. In fairness, every company of scale does. But so when we got into Total, we started doing tastings. We gave a lot of resources to Florida, and it's paid off. It's worked really well. But we're not in Massachusetts at all. So we've decided, like, Jameson own Boston, and so let them have it. There's 49 other states there. 30 of them are really good whiskey drinking states. So we're recently just we got a lovely order from Missouri, our first. So we're not going to say no to an order, but in the same breath, I think we're now in 11 states, and like some of those. So we're in California. California is the size of a third of Europe. Like it's 40 times the size of Europe population or of Ireland population wise. So like Florida is probably enough for us, but in the same breath, we got an email from a really credible distributor that we checked out saying, I've been following your progress with the double golds. I'd really like to stock your product to see you're not in Missouri. Okay, let's go. But by right, we should do tastings there. One of us should go out and meet the man besides Zooms. And so it's hard to be disciplined or make those calls. And similarly, we're really excited and we really believe in both those range of products. Similarly with the gin, we haven't really pushed the gin that hard at all in the States, just because we can only push so many things at one time. And I think even if we get a meeting with them, a new distributor, it's okay. What product? What are we talking about? You don't want to show them 10 products. You know what I mean? I think a jack of all trades, master of none. You do your homework and you kind of see a gap in his state, and you say, "Are a good price point." And I say, "Okay, I think Spanish Earl is the one for you. I don't see that many other single malts there, and we have a good price point and it's unique branding. We do gift boxes, and you kind of got to make those calls from a level in the background. So I don't know too much about your listener base, but even I know enough about the States that a lot of people spend a lot of time in their state, and it's like 50 different countries. The alcohol rules there, they're crazy. The 3-tier system is just mental. Ireland has pretty antiquated alcohol laws too, but I mean, we've got over prohibition. You know what I mean? We've moved on, and the States hasn't.
You've got to go back a few episodes and listen to Chuck Garrity in New Jersey, one of the brewery owners.
Okay, I definitely will.
That is, there's a lot of stuff going on in New Jersey, but you make a good point. It's like these laws are so. It's very similar to Europe, where you go country to country, and those laws are very different. Well, state to state is maybe just as different, if not more different here.
So like New Jersey, it's a bit. England and France are joined by a tunnel, and they have a similar relationship to New Jersey and New York, and then lots of people go across the bridge of the tunnel to stock up on their liquor. But invariably, those customers are bulk buying. So, like for me, that's a Wild Atlantic market rather than the Earls. But I know that now. But we started with the Earls first, just because we had that product first. So we tried Jersey, because lots of our liquid is stored there in I'm trying to think of the name of the thing. We've a big space in the warehouse rented there. But so figuring out even how those two states interact is an interesting one. Similarly, the control states is a really challenging one. So like for some of the control states, I think there's 17 of them, and there's two regions then as well. you got to propose a price and a quantity and one of your products that you think will sell there, and they will take it or they won't. A lot of times they'll just get no feedback. So you could be off by a cent. Sorry, not for you. Could be a huge order, or they'll say yes. But if they buy it and that product doesn't sell, they will discount you like bargain basement, flog it off or whatever the cheapest they can, and never list you again. For 100 years, never list you again. So you're like, oh my God. So I want to make a margin, but I want to make sure it sells. And so for us, we're just going through some of them now. We haven't done any of the controlled states because I guess we don't know the market enough, and we're probably not big enough to take one of those hits. Like for example, Pennsylvania is named after William Penn, who spent time in Kinsale, the town where we're from. Like there's a massive linked history there. His father's estate was nearby, kind of Ballymaloe, Ballycott. So like we could have a really nice marketing play around that. But it's a controlled state, so it's a really challenging pitch. And even other things. So in Ireland, we have all kinds of promotions. I'm trying to look around my desk to see if I can show you, but we have so we give out glassware to bars, or we have Dexa branded cards that go with things, or we have opportunities to win a trip to Kinsale. And in every state, it's different what you can and can't do. Some states you can do whatever you want. Free bottle with every bottle of whiskey, nobody cares. Buy 10, great. And then in other states, it's like just the bottle, no promotion, no stickers, no sales. You're like, how do I stand out?
And that's a good segue too, because you made a comment earlier. It was Jameson owns Boston, right? And that's fair to say. I mean, there's JMO everywhere here, but Jameson, you can also argue, owns Ireland too, right? So how, I guess, from your perspective, you've got obviously you have a very unique value in the sense that, you make it there. It's an Irish brand.
Yep.
You've spent a lot of time discussing how to get to the States which we asked you, of course, but what's the perception in Ireland too? Because that's I would have to say a big piece of where you get the overall community support. So I mean that local community influence and all that stuff. How does that play into the grand scheme of things?
There's a few things. One is that this figure isn't my own, but more than half the Irish whiskies I see in America are not available in Ireland at all. For two reasons, in my opinion. One, it's too small a market, and two, it's too competitive, Ireland. So because we're all here. So for that reason, so like particularly the ones with the second names, a lot of them are white label products and they're good, but so Sullivan's whiskey and Murphy's whiskey, and none of them are in Ireland. Like a lot of them, somebody would send me a message of just a friend saying, I'm in Philadelphia, never saw this, and like would be their second name. O'Donoghue's Irish whiskey. It's geez, I never heard of it, but I'd show me the back and I might be able to tell you where it's from or whatever. So that is one part. The products just aren't here, and also it's uber competitive. It's funny, Irish. So I own 2 bars in Ireland, and we don't sell a huge amount of whiskey. We sell it in cocktails. We're not tourist bars, so that would be a big part of the thing. We tend not to have older clientele. So you see, we don't have a culture of chasers here. What do you call them? It's not chasers. Is it chasers?
Shots?
Shots, yeah. So people would do shots at the end of the night. They would do like really cheap tequila or sambuca, and it's just like vomiting-inducing torture, right? There's no give me a beer and a shot. Like I've had a hard day. Like there would be no shots ever sold before 11 o'clock at night. You know what I mean? It's just a nightclub thing. So that whole for example, like Fireball, like that product doesn't exist here because there is no thing. No, Jaeger bombs is kind of a thing, but we don't really have that kind of whole massive college culture either. As in a brand could be made in that college culture alone. But so that's one whole market of whiskey drinking that's left out. Tourists. But for example, Dublin, Galway, and some parts of Cork, there's loads of tourists. So they obviously do sell whiskey. But so I'm saying I don't have there's people who would have a drop of whiskey every day or with their pint of Guinness. They're older, so they're not my customers. And neither are the tourists. So maybe I'm not the most representative part. But for me, and I only kind of my own decisions, better or worse, France is a massive, one of the biggest markets for Irish whiskey. But uber competitive, very price sensitive, very disjointed, a lot of independent off-license, really disjointed model. So we've decided this is not the market for us. Germany is a massive one. but they really like trying new products. And I think you could say the same with wine and France, but in Germany, they're really into beer and they're into craft. And Germany's been a lovely little market for us. So like if you look at in the top 10 countries for Irish whiskey at the moment, Nigeria and South Africa are in the top 10. So for me, exploding populations, massively growing middle class, massive demand for imported products, like that's where we should be putting our resources. So Nigeria, we've just started business there after a year of doing all the paperwork and finding a distributor, and they're going to play a big part in our business. So it's kind of about trade-off. So like, do I want to sell? Would I concentrate more in Ireland, where all the brands are, or would I go to Nigeria where maybe only 30 of them are? You know what I mean? And where the prize is ultimately bigger. We definitely spent. The way we did is the way we did it. I think we probably spent too long bogged down in Ireland. But the flip side of it is that, as I said, we learned our trade and our craft, and we kind of honed our offering in a smaller market and a competitive market, which was useful and it stood to us. But the flip side of it is that you kind of get bogged down in Ireland, so we would regularly get customers say to us, like, I love this bar and I love your product, but they don't stock it. So it's okay, we'll send the rep up. But it's like a 3-hour drive and the guy's going to buy one bottle, and that time is probably better figuring out, are we going to make an application for the control state of thing? And like while 11 people is a lot of people, it's still tiny. I mean, we've a person who's like one finance person, and they do some logistics as well. And so it's really about limited resources, time as much as money, in making those decisions. But to go back to your question about Ireland, it's an unusual whiskey market in itself. It's uber competitive. And there has been a bit of a change recently to smaller brands' advantage, in that there was a thing called below cost selling. So supermarkets were allowed to sell alcohol for below what they bought it for, as a way to entice customers in. So you could get a bottle of Jameson on special for €18, and so for us, we just couldn't compete with it. Like, it just would be the price of $2. Whereas they introduced minimum. So I think a 700 milliliter, a standard unit of alcohol, like a bottle, cannot be anything less than €22 or something like that now. So it's just closed that gap. So before, somebody went in and said, white label, own brand, Old Mama's whiskey, $15, or Red Earl, $29. Jesus, twice the price. I've never heard of it. Whereas if you're comparing, 22 and 29, or for us incentivized to come down, we're on special offer, we go $5 off. It's only €3 or $3 extra for somebody to take a chance on our product. So that's given us a big competitive advantage. So to answer your question, we're probably pushing our whiskies more now in Ireland because we see an opportunity there we hadn't previously. That's a very long-winded answer for a straightforward question, but it's one that we're learning as we go. And I suppose whiskey sales are growing really nice for us in Ireland without a huge amount of effort behind it, which makes me think, should we let that happen? Or what would happen if we put some more effort behind it? Would we grow faster? I don't know, and we'll chat again in a year and I'll tell you, you know what I mean? But it's funny that you say about Jameson. So over 70% of all Irish whiskey sales are Jameson. So like that is just a beast. And then if you add in Bushmills and Tullamore Dew. So Tullamore Dew isn't big in Ireland at all. Like it's only so big there, but Bushmills will be much bigger, for example, or Paddy. But if you include them, it's up to 86%. So you've all these other brands scrapping it out for 14%. But in the same breath, the category is only so big because Jameson sponsored Friends, the TV show, and they like own cities like Boston and New York, and so they've paved the way for us. We're still only, I think, 1/8 of the size of the global Scotch market. So when people say to me, do you think we've reached peak Irish whiskey? I say, well, we're only at 15% or whatever of Scotch sales, so I think there's plenty of room to go. You know what I mean? But and I think next year maybe we're projected Irish whiskey sales will overtake Scotch sales for the first time in the US since before Prohibition, which is pretty exciting.
Now, why do you think that is?
I think loads of things. So post Prohibition, like 1940s, 1950s, it got down to 2 distilleries in Ireland. Now I think there's probably 40 whiskey distilleries, another 40 under development. So, but even going back, 10 years, there was probably only 5 or 6 sizable Irish whiskies at once. So it just, whereas with Scotland, they just exploded over the traps there. So that was a big factor. I also think that they had a big advantage, I suppose, globally, but with the Commonwealth and their relationship with big countries like India and things like that. You know what I mean? So there was natural trade connections there. I think that then just the constant immigration of Irish people has to have been a factor. I presume Irish immigration to the US and the Irish diaspora is multiples of times of the Scotch diaspora. That has to be a factor too. And I think Ireland, like in the 50s and 60s, was a really poor country. We joined the European Union. Economically, we had it's called the economic miracle, and it just changed. So we went from a really low GDP to a really high one. And I think Ireland overall is a good brand. People like visiting it. I think, well, maybe it's saturated in the likes of Boston or New York. Invariably, if you meet somebody and they say, I'm from Finland, or I'm from Scandinavia, or I'm from Kurdistan, or whatever, you're, interesting. Or you're from Ireland. Like, usually it gets a positive reaction. So I think Irish products have a bit of credibility and a bit of positivity. It's also kind of what we're known for, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's
Irish whiskey.
Yeah, it's Irish whiskey. You know what I mean? And it's synonymous with hospitality and having a good time and maybe drinking too much, whatever it is. But like, let's embrace it. That's what we are. So yeah. But as relation to Scotch, I think a lot of it probably to do was just I presume there was some expert marketing campaigns and things like that over the years too. But the amount of stunning high quality distilleries in Scotland is crazy. Like the volume of them and the layout of them within a small space time, and also the consolidation. So I think Diageo, I could be wrong, but I think Diageo own 15 distilleries in Scotland. But they avail of the supply chain and the distribution, but they all have kept their own brand. So like, that's a phenomenal model, and that gives them massive power. So maybe Ireland needs to, maybe in a few years there'll be more consolidation and go that way. There definitely has been a lot of big acquisitions, like Brown-Forman buying Slane whiskey, for example, things like that. So take Slane as an example. Slane, you would rarely see it around Ireland as a product. Sure, it's a massive success in the US, but so it's curious that they have decided that it's not a market for them. Yeah. And I see it in Germany and France and stuff, so they are doing it outside the US, but.
And you talked about your product. I mean, obviously it's award-winning, and when people try it, people like it. But let's take a little step further. One thing we've noticed, especially talking to hundreds of people in the beer, wine, alcohol industry, it's all about the branding, the story, the imagery, the history. So tell us a little bit more on like the Kinsale. Let's get into home of like why Kinsale Spirit Company as the name. Obviously, location takes a part of it, but the historical factors that involve all of your branding as well.
Yeah, and that goes back to just my point about getting a bit bogged down in Ireland. So everybody in Ireland knows Kinsale. People, holidays there, it's like has really positive memories. And I'm trying to think of places in the States, kind of like, Myrtle Beach and these kind of places where people like just have, it's in Newport, like just good memories of it. It's a place they want to go. But Kinsale isn't really known in the States. It is known among certain people and the Irish diaspora and stuff, but overall it isn't like, it wouldn't be known like Galway or Dublin would be known. So we even struggled with that a little bit. Like, so on our bottle there, it's on Kinsale, it says Kinsale Spirit Company. But it takes so much effort and time to get somebody even familiar with one brand. I suppose a shorter way of saying this is Diageo. We all know Guinness. We all know their brands. We know Smirnoff, but they don't spend huge money marketing Diageo. You know what I mean? So for us, our overall company is Kinsale Spirit Company. So it's a chicken and egg for new product releases. If Kinsale Spirit Company, had that credibility and that brand familiarity, so somebody say, I know there are other products, that'd be great. But I mean, the amount of work and time it takes to get there in every market is just massive. So we even like Red Earl is the best selling of the three Earls. It's got the widest distribution, it's the most competitive price point. It's a very agreeable drink. It's phenomenal with ginger ale and a slice of orange. It's an easy sipper. It's a nice drink, and it is never going to change the world in that it's like Great Earl is quite a distinct whiskey, with the result that people kind of love or hate it. Everybody likes Red Earl, but being honest, nobody's like, this is the best whiskey I ever had. But I really haven't seen anyone who said I don't like it either. It's all been a positive reaction. So going back to your question about Kinsale, it's the most stunning town. We're building our distillery in a phenomenal location. There's some really good bars there. It's a really nice community. There's some smaller things like lots of botanicals from our gin come there. It's a place so we do some business in China, quite a lot of business in China actually. And for them, provenance is a big thing. And I think for us, it's important that Kinsale is real. So when you Google it, Kinsale is a real place. When you look it up, you go, oh, that's really nice. You know what I mean? And it's not just a made up generic Irishy sounding name for a white label project. So there's serious backstory and heritage. And if we hope in time that people will visit our distillery and they'll try our other products or even look up Kinsale or interact with us in some way online or through social media. But you need such a depth of brand and trust and relationship with a customer to even go that far. So we experiment with putting QR codes on the bottles, and so one of the things with Wild Atlantic is when you scan the QR code on the back, it takes you to a tasting, a video of Colin, our CEO, talking through the tasting of it. We did explainer videos, so we spent a lot of money getting this really good animation done of the histories of the characters in the Earls. But how far, so if you like the drink, how many people are going to go to the effort of actually looking at the story of the character that it was based on? You know what I mean? For some people, they just go, right price, good drink, I like it. They might be a great customer, but they just aren't that interested. You know what I mean? You could go for a sandwich, the same place every day after for your lunch. Love it. I love their Reuben. I love their Reuben. I love their Reuben. Oh yeah, okay. Where does their beef come from? The salted beef. Oh, I have no idea. But you have the sandwich every day. But yeah, I just never asked. I don't care. It tastes good. Whereas other people, what's the name of the farmer? What color was the cow? Tell me everything about it. They're just different things. But I suppose for us, Kinsale, the original thing was that's where Tom lives. He loves the town. It's in Ireland and in Europe. It's a good brand. It's really well known. So that was probably the starting point, and then it was just who we are. So for us, I'm under no illusion that Kinsale isn't known in Nigeria or China, but thankfully we've good connections and our products have stood up on their own, and maybe that's how those people have find out about Kinsale, and that's okay too. But it's a tricky one when you have multiple products and you're trying to tie them all under the one umbrella, and sometimes all they have really in common is that they come from us, but they're quite different products. So yeah, it's a daily struggle. It's a daily struggle.
So we can't let you go without talking about the Cask Club as well. This is a relatively new endeavor and something that's pretty unique too. So what, I love the site. It's very straightforward. It kind of piques everybody's interest. It says interested in investing in your own cask and joining the Kinsale Cask Club. So you've hooked us. What is the Cask Club? Okay,
so the Cask Club is the opportunity for somebody to buy a cask of whiskey, have an input into that, but also it will be one of the first 500 from our distillery. So we're using this money to build the distillery as we go. And we have an event. So the first one is actually before the distillery is open. So it's when are we in July? It's towards the end of August. Our first actual get together of around, I think, 80 people have confirmed they're coming. And they'll be tasting new products they haven't released yet. We're having dinner together, kind of secret location. It can say a bit of a unique thing. So the idea is to get these people and kind of build a community and get them to know each other. And ultimately, I would love to do a trip to Newport with them. I would love to. We've got probably one of the best golf courses in the world in Kinsale, the Old Head of Kinsale. If you're into golf, it is just stunning. It's worth a look. So it's about. I think you have people who are interested in whiskey, and it kind of can become a hobby. You know what I mean? They're really interested in it. But you can only drink so much whiskey. You know what I mean? And it's a way to take it to the next level, to have your own cask. I think in the background, maybe it's not as exciting, but it's a really solid investment. If you look up whiskey historically, it's always beat inflation. It's tended to be recession-proof. For us, we have confidence in our brand. We think being one of the first 500 will give it good prestige and resale value. My guess is that for anyone who wants to sell the cask, we will end up buying it back anyway, because we'll want that aged liquid for releases and we'll need it, which is, I suppose, good for everyone. And it's an investment, but it's also kind of a lifestyle, a fun thing. particularly, so a lot of them have sold to Irish people, which is good for us. But some of the ones we've sold in the States, I don't think those people are going to get here every year for the get together. But we will facilitate their bucket list trip to the distillery where they get to taste the cask. When it's 2 or 3 years aged, it's not quite whiskey yet. And then at the end of it, I suppose that's the other nice thing, is that at the end of it, we can facilitate them having it bottled and branded and sent out to them. Or they can leave it sit there as long as they want. Because there's one person said to us, "Where are you going to be in 21 years?" I said, "I don't know. I'm still knocking about, I hope, but our whiskey definitely will be." He said, "I'd like to buy a cask for my son. He's just been born, and I'd like to give it to him maybe when he graduates college, when he's 21, legal drinking age in the US." I said, "God, that's a pretty cool gift." You know what I mean? It's a generous gift. But he said, "Yeah, but if the guy wants to sell it to fund his college education, or whether he wants to bottle it, or whether we go to Ireland and have a trip," I was like, "God, that's really cool." You know what I mean? So different people are, I think some people will just want it as an investment. Other people will want it as a chance to visit a distillery, have a behind-the-scenes tour. And other people, I think, particularly people in Ireland, will make that pilgrimage to Kinsale every year, taste our new releases, have events in the distillery, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's exciting. There's been loads of interest. So it's and for us, it's good business as well, because we ultimately we want to get our distillery built, but at the same time, it would be good to know that aged liquid is out there for us to be able to buy in 5 or 7 years and do a Kinsale 7 or whatever release.
So, I mean, you kind of told us what the future looks like. So, what is, I guess, one goal that you want to accomplish by the end of this year? Mm-hmm. And what is a goal that you're setting for yourself for 2024?
Sure. So our relationship with SuperValu as a chain in Ireland has been really mutually beneficial. And I think we're probably on the pathway to Total Wines being that for us in the US. We're not exclusive with them, even though we're exploring some exclusive lines with them. We have lots of other customers. But for me, it's just, I like everything about their stores. I think there's really professional offering. The training they do with the staff is phenomenal. The people who work there seem to really enjoy it. They're obviously well compensated because it seems to be good staff retention. So building a relationship with that, because for us, there's kind of the same amount of work as dealing with a small customer as a big customer. Don't get me wrong, every customer matters. But to be able to go into one of those big stores, train all the staff, do tastings, take part in their promotions, they have phenomenal marketing opportunities. It's game-changing for us. So that probably is one of my goals. The other one is to get the distillery fully operational. It's not there yet. Takes lots of time and money, takes lots of licensing and paperwork, but we're plowing through it. So I would think that would be, will we have our first cask of whiskey fully distilled by the year end? We're going to be thereabouts, I would have thought. So that obviously is a massive part of the puzzle too. You know what I mean? And then for a personal goal, it's probably tied to the distillery, because a manufacturing business is something I have never done, in a hands-on point of view. It's a whole other thing, and I'm really excited about. I'm under no illusions it's going to be extremely hard work and challenging, and I'd say making good tasting whiskey is not that easy. Whatever, selling it isn't easy, but making it isn't easy either. So that probably is a personal challenge, learning more and more about the science and the hands-on part of that. For me, it's a pity the timing of our podcast a little bit, because I've one or two related projects that I would love to tell you about, and it's just too early days. But we might circle back at some stage, because there's some. I think there's ones you'd find interesting, and one in particular is very much US based and kind of topical.
Well, you'll come back and we'll hear all about this new stuff when it launches for sure, and we're happy to evangelize a bit. But to close out here, what would maybe there are folks that want to get into the spirit industry, or maybe they're hooked. Maybe they see the value and say, I'm going to go start my own Irish whiskey brand, right? What advice would you give to those folks?
Yeah, it's funny. I would. The first thing I would say is to decide whether or not it's a lifestyle or a business. So for us, we kind of merged from a hobby into a business, and that was our road, and it's worked out okay for us. But I suppose, if it's a lifestyle, put some money into it and make someone sell it locally or enjoy with your friends and go down that road. And maybe if Ireland is your thing, concentrate in your Ireland or your region. Whereas if it's going to be a business and you really want to scale and stuff, I would just say export. Just because it's there's lots of noise in Ireland, but it's such a big world out there, and thankfully they love Irish products, they love Irish whiskey. So why not give it to them? You know what I mean? So for us, markets like Nigeria and China are really interesting. Like Ukraine is a topical one at the moment, so we've just started doing business there. I wouldn't have thought that would happen in the current climate, but there still seems to be plenty of Irish whiskey being drunk there, and they're doing business with us. Happy days. That part of the world is actually massive for Irish whiskey, as was Russia before they misbehaved, so they have to be on the sidelines and drink ginger ale or something for a while. But Poland and Germany, all that side of Europe is really good Irish whiskey country. So I suppose what I'm saying in short is that export is where it's at, I think.
Ernest, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much. Where can our listeners find out more about Kinsale and where they can follow and find your products?
Yeah, so Google a Kinsale Spirit will get you there. We've got a dedicated US site. We've quite good. We can ship to anywhere in the States. It depends, being honest, on where you are. If the shipping makes sense to ship a bottle, but more and more in places like Total and in bars of all kinds of bars and restaurants actually. So we're getting there on both coasts and making a bit of a dent in the middle too. So hopefully we'll be coming to them, I guess. But if they go to kinsalespirit.com, they'll come across. They'll be redirected to the US website anyway, and they'll have access. They can buy straight through there.
Awesome. We appreciate the time. Good luck with everything. And what's that?
I really enjoyed the chat. I'm very enjoyable.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.